All right, let's get right into it. Number one is fixation on labels. By this, I mean things like good, advanced, expert, you could say fluency, and other things like that. Apart from organizing material that you're using to learn from or that you're using to follow some sort of a structure, these terms and these labels are completely useless. So I'm going to talk about why they hinder us. And it's usually two categories. You have ego, entitlement, comparison, and so on. And then you also have definitions and micro definitions, and how everyone will have a different version of these things. And so with these things, when you start to consider it too much, or you start to get too much input on these particular subjects, all it's going to do is take away your time and focus from the goal that you're actually trying to reach in that thing. So rather than labels, what you should do is just keep your mind focused on what you're actually trying to do. Keep it focused on the most practical aspect of why you got into that thing in the first place. A great case for this is language learning, right? Language learning is a place where there's so much emphasis on titles that people often forget the main goal at hand, or the main goal that they are trying to use that for. So in my case, my goals for learning something like Japanese, for example, were to make a lot of money in Japan using the language and to communicate back and forth smoothly with a native speaker. And then a micro definition for me would be something like the word smoothly, which I would define as no hesitation between us speaking. They can hear me and respond with no delay, and I can hear them and respond with no delay. And so in my case, I accomplished both of these quite well. However, you or someone else may have a different definition of those things. And so you can't really apply these labels to your learning because you have completely different goals from me, if they are different. Or you may have completely different goals from someone else you may hear some label or title from, which goes back to saying that none of these labels really mean anything, and they don't do anything. Anytime you think of a label, anytime you think of some title that you want to add on, what you need to immediately convert that idea to is your goal. So if someone says, are you a beginner, blah, 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 just, I don't know, I'm learning this. Are you fluent? Whatever, I'm learning this, or I'm using it for this. Continuously bridge that gap and try to switch a label over to goals. And you're going to notice in the long run that you save a lot of time. You save an immense amount of time and a lot of wasted thoughts on things that just don't really matter. I personally only use the word fluent for search analytics and just typability. Is that a word? Typability in YouTube. But other than that, I think it's a very useless term. I think it only distracts you from what you really want to use the language for. And unfortunately, it is an ego-based term for a lot of people. For some people, it's just the dictionary definition, but for others, it is an ego or elitist type title that people will hold on to. So someone may hear me and, my accent's off and I use the incorrect words or the incorrect ending of a word sometimes. I mess up the grammar here and there. And they may say like, oh, complete beginner, trash, or whatever. That's totally okay. And honestly, I say this to say, you really should just let it go. Don't worry about that. Don't worry about other people's labels. All that's gonna do is distract you from your goal. And if you're on my channel, you know I'm all about practicality and just staying focused on what you really wanna do inside of that area that you're studying. This is even more important the more interest you have. So for example, if you do 6 different things, you don't have time to be worrying about chasing things that are not inside of your window of practicality, or worrying about labels and things like that, because you need to take the time you have to do that thing and do it so you can go do something else. I really hope this is making sense. And even while I'm on the topic of language itself, say your goal is to only watch content without subtitles. You don't care about speaking, you don't care about business and all that. You would benefit from just input, vocabulary, grammar, learning things like that, because that's going to get you to your goal fast. And I also say this to say that there is no label for that. There's no such thing as like a fluent understander who can't speak and blah, blah, blah. It's just wasted time, wasted movement. Get it out of your life. Which leads me right into point number 2, the fear of embarrassment, mistakes, and others' opinions. So whatever you're really trying to learn, you should make it a point and almost purposefully make it a point to make mistakes and be happy with those mistakes. Something to help that idea out is to know that anyone that is good at what you're looking to be good at has most likely dealt with the same issues. Something you should also know is the psychology behind a highly judgmental person. So a highly judgmental person usually operates out of fear to do what you're doing, an ego-driven or entitled mentality, and or a false sense of competency in that area. And so the solution for all of these is to really just ignore it. Like I said at point number one, as long as you can take any of these things and go right back to your goal, you're gonna save a lot of time, a lot of stress, a lot of wasted words and all that, and just stay focused on what's practical for you. You know, around the right people and the right environments, embarrassment is a good thing, and mistakes are a good thing because they can help you grow and they can help you make some improvements that you want to make that's going to help you get to your goal. And the quicker you can internalize that idea across anything that you're doing, the more you're going to be okay with just doing things wrong, making mistakes, asking questions, looking silly, all that kind of stuff. Because no one who's good has skipped that process. But along with that, disregard irrelevant opinions quickly. You want to get those out of your mind and out of your life as soon as possible, so you can take all those extra minutes and seconds and focus it on what really matters. Of course, if there are glaring mistakes that are hindering your goal, don't ignore those or count them as useless because of a pride or ego issue. But if it's not that deep or not that important or not that useful for you, I would say either correct it later or just forget about it and get on to your goal. The next one, fear of learning things the wrong way. Now, there's two ways that people think are incorrect when you learn something, and one of them falls under the immutability fallacy. I believe that's how you say it. You could also call this the perfect practice fallacy. And in a nutshell, that means people who wrongly assume only flawless practice leads to good progress or really lasting results. And that's just something that's not true. You often see this in fields of like languages or musical instruments or anything that involves the physical body. They think if you learn it wrong, that's it. You're doomed and you'll never be able to fix it, and you have these poor habits that you can never overcome. This is a complete false idea that you really should get out of your mind and out of your life as soon as possible. But this can also apply to other things, abstract things, ideas, logical ways of thinking, just whatever really. It doesn't have to be something that you're physically doing, but it's ideas too. This fallacy holds a lot of people back. And unfortunately, it's one of the main causes for things like inaction and perfectionism, because people get so caught up in trying to find the correct way to do things or not being willing to make mistakes or make minor imperfections along the way that they don't really do anything. I have a buddy from my gym who taught himself to box through DVDs. And on the surface, that may sound silly. However, when he first had his first sparring session, yeah, there were some things wrong, but you could see him putting together the pieces that he was missing. And it was combining what he knew with new things, and it was correcting minor things like throw the jab this way, step this way. And he was able to make a lot of these corrections quite fast because he just sat there and practiced it. And over time, it was as if he had been doing it with other people for a long time. I've actually seen this in MMA overall, people who learn skills on YouTube or Instagram, something they saw on a reel and they come try it out. And eventually their body will integrate it into what they're doing. Or maybe they were doing something wrong and they fix it. Something they've been doing wrong for years and they fix it, and it's as if they've been doing right the whole time. You'll see this in things like music. People with incorrect technique fix it and it's smooth and there's no issues after that. And I bring all these up to say, like, you don't want to let trying to do something the correct way or the perfect way or the most set in stone way hold you back from actually doing something, because many people, whether they realize it or not, are stuck in the inaction and perfectionism loop because they're trying to do things the correct way. So quickly try to let that go and understand that there's no wrong way to do things. Now I'll introduce a common counter argument here, and that is waiting for the perfect plan versus correcting mistakes along the way. Which gives the best end result? And no surprise, in my experience and from what I've seen through a lot of other people, The cases where people just go and make mistakes and try things, they get the most lasting results. And it's usually because the person who's trying to find that way is hesitating. Unfortunately, these people also latch on to outliers and they say, well, this person did so-and-so, so maybe I should wait. An example is like someone who has 12 hours a day to study a language. And you may say that this person waited 3 years to speak and they got really good results. Yes, that's true. But that is not you. You probably don't have 12 hours a day. You may not even have an hour a day. So it's best to take what's realistic for you. And that means just doing the practical with whatever you're trying to do. It doesn't even have to be language, just whatever you're trying to do. Don't latch on to outliers and justify their experience for yours because it's not your experience. And again, like I said earlier, in a general sense, the more things you have, the more interests you have, the more things you're into, the more you need to focus on just doing things and taking action, because that is what's going to give you those results that you're looking for. Which leads me into the next one, and that is forsaking what you see in real life for something you saw online or whatever. I talk about this a lot in older videos, but this is things like Reddit threads or forums or some scientific study, which I'm not saying are bad. I mean, in many cases they are bad, let's just be honest. But don't forget what you see happening right in front of you when you go outside. And as a side note, some people ask why I'm so critical of things like science studies. I've done them. That's why. I'm not going to throw out my credentials and all these other titles I have because, again, I think they're useless. But many of these have confounding variables, limited scopes, and just a lot of other issues that you don't see. And then you start to read these and take it into your brain and think that it's going to work and that it's way better than real life. I want to help you realize that real life is just that. It's real life, and you need to pay attention to that. I'm not saying disregard everything you read on the internet. This is not a black and white view that you should hold. This is not something I'm trying to put across, but I really want you to pay attention to what you see and stop doing so much bookworm activity and reading through all these articles and all that. You got to go outside and experiment and see what's happening in real life. You're often going to notice that the answers are right there. They're oftentimes right in front of us, and then we kind of see if we can find something better. Try to avoid that as much as you can. Of course, take it into account, like I said, but try to avoid doing that and just take action on what you see happening in front of you. Another note on science too, and studies and forums and all that, is a lot of this stuff sounds qualified and it sounds great. Maybe even the abstracts are great or their sources are great, but so many things are thrown out. So many studies that show the inverse are thrown out that you really need to put extra emphasis. And I know this is like the 8th time I said it. I don't care. It's my channel. I do what I want. Put extra emphasis on what you see happening in real life. I cannot say that enough. And the last one is lack of clarity and direction. And I really just bring this up to say, take all these points, take what I say, take my other videos. The two in particular I want to reference are the Teach Yourself video and goal setting video. And take some material and go and get your results. If there's a few things you're going to learn on my channel, it's relevancy, practicality, and taking action. I often have to drive this point home at the end of almost all my videos now, because this is the truth about what holds people back from learning fast or learning in general, and it's the truth about getting results. As a YouTuber, it's nice to have you click on my videos, even the two I just mentioned, but you don't have to if you don't really need to. What's better is to keep those three things in mind: the relevancy, the practicality, and just taking action. And so to close, I'll say, if you keep all this in mind, you're gonna have a lot of peace and like self-assurance when you do things, when you take action, and when you are staying focused on your goals, because you're not gonna have too much background noise going on or mental clutter going on. You're gonna hyper focus on what you need to get done. But anyways, if you found this helpful, subscribe, or I will send this eel from Super Mario 64 to come and get you if you don't subscribe. And if you have any questions, you can leave them in the comments. I'll probably link some relevant videos, but other than that, please get off YouTube and just go practice. Peace.